Hello, Internet. I was asked about drawing horses because, well, someone noticed that in the last project I did, Dracula Son, there were a lot of horses that I drew. I was asked if I actually had a book about drawing horses, constructive drawing specifically. I do not. I don't even have any drawing books at this point, although I've thought about it, but I have not made a book about drawing yet. Just some videos, and I do have the dynamic drawing and making comics websites. If you're interested in those, check the WDU for links. What I did think I could do was quickly illustrate how I draw horses. So the first thing I would recommend if you want to draw better horses is to get reference of horses, because you're not going to be able to draw them from your imagination very well unless you have a photographic memory. Most of us do not. I have the opposite. I have aphantasia. I have no visual memory. So I definitely need to go look at things and study how they're built and think about how the structures work together. Constructive styles of anatomy are good. They're handy, but they're simplifications of proper full anatomy. So I would recommend you actually look at musculature and skeletal anatomy of horses or whatever animal it is you're looking at, to understand how the underlying forms work, and then from there look at how to simplify them into constructive forms. A lot of people want to, cut to the end and just do constructive work and sort of as a cheat. It's not really cheating, it's just a shortcut, but I think in the end you're only robbing yourself of more facility and flexibility later on down the line if you don't do the fundamentals. And it's really not that hard. Just get photographs of actual horses in action and get anatomical drawings of horses' musculature and skeletal structure. There are definitely some features of horses that are particularly tricky and trip people up a lot. So that's one of the reasons you want to look at how they're built. Definitely the legs often catch people. Like we try to think about them too much like arms and legs on a human, but they're configured very differently, even though there are analogs for almost every part of the leg. So at this point, I've done all of that. I've looked at the anatomy. I've done some studies where I actually sketched the musculature, and I've learned how to simplify it a little bit. And usually what I do is I start with, like most anatomical forms, living forms, I start with the core of the what would be on a human, a torso. So on a horse, it's going to be something like this shape. And it's not that different than a human torso. There's a dark red that shows the camera better. So a human rib cage and hips. And if you simplify it, you get something that people refer to as the bean. So on a horse, you have this shape like this, and then that. So it's analogous to those two. I'm just going to draw right over top of it. And this small part is where the pelvis is, but then the muscles are quite large as they get much bigger. This, from the front, is quite round. They're, on a human being, you'd call it barrel-chested. Most horses are barrel-chested. Some of them are a little bit narrower, like this. It depends on the physique of the horse, sort of, and how they're built. So just like humans, they're individuals and they have their own shapes. Then you want to think about what would be on us, our shoulder muscles, and the rib cage is like that. And then, unlike, say, a cat where the arms go up to almost where the spine is, the shoulders on a horse start at the side. And then there's this thing here, and that is sort of like the equivalent of our upper arm, and here's our elbow. This is one of the things that people often get tripped up with horses. So coming down, we're already coming off of would be the elbow with our knee on a leg, and then we have these structures. So what's going on with these other joints? Do they have more joints than us? Not really. This is on us the equivalent of a wrist, and then here is sort of the equivalent of our hand with our fingers at the end. And if you didn't realize that about horse anatomy, you might have just sort of blown your mind a little bit. It really helps, though, to understand that difference. They're I guess it would be our breast muscles. up here between the shoulders. And so what I'm doing is semi-constructive, but sort of more of a gestural, quick version of the anatomy. And then, so I mentioned that the pelvis is there. It's, if I recall, it's sort of this shape to simplify, but I just use the ball form. And then this is the large group of their thigh, large group of muscles and bone. And then it comes back and down. And again, this is their knee. So this is the ankle. And then down near the bottom, the lower hoof. And I'll often sort of adjust and shift my position of things if it feels like I've made it too narrow or a little off. They actually have sort of a bone that goes to it there, and then this is all hair usually for the tail. And then horses' necks vary in length, but they're pretty long. And then they've got a bundle of muscles in the bottom, and muscles like that. That's where the eye is going to be. And the back of the head's pretty narrow, and that's where your ears go. Now, horses are definitely challenging. Getting the proportions of the different parts to feel right is one of the hardest things. I still wrestle with it, and I often tweak and fiddle as I'm going. But having done a book with many drawings of horses in it, I feel like I've definitely improved. And when it comes right down to it, that's the thing, is there's an animal that you want to be able to draw. There's only one thing for it, which is to practice the anatomy of that animal a lot. And the more you do, either just as an exercise, or in the case, I had done a little bit of horse drawing, but I never really had perfected it before I had to draw many horses in Dracula Son of the Dragon. So that was one of those things that when I started doing the book, I recognized right away, well, I'm going to get a real workout on my horse anatomy. So I often was drawing horses with saddles, so I would then do this, work out the shape of the saddle. And from there, so the figurative contour then looks like, oops, don't press too hard, because that's what happens when you do. I often sort of cheat some of these shapes and simplify them. I am cartooning in the end. If you want to get really precise, that's a little bit different. It's a bit more large there. And frequently when I'm doing an up-close shot and I kind of want to really nail the anatomy exactly, you know, I'm doing it mostly from memory right now, but I will often still pull out a photograph and reference what I'm doing and make sure that I'm grounding it. So I would recommend the saying, don't feel like you're supposed to know these things or get it the first time. You don't, not without practice. That's how that works. Drawing is like any other manual skill. It takes a lot of practice. When you're finishing and cleaning up a drawing, or if you're doing inking, there's an old joke that got immortalized in a movie that I really don't like that very much, to be honest, Chasing Amy. about how inkers are tracers. This is actually, that's a really bad inker. When you're doing your own cleanups, when you're inking art, your own or somebody else's, when you're revising and going over something, I've said it before in other videos, never trace unless you're absolutely certain that line is the one you want to commit to. And even then, if you try to trace it exactly, as opposed to follow it, you're going to get a slavish, poor expression of it. So what you want to really do is, whenever possible, seeing opportunities to revise, do that. Revise, clean up, add more expression, find ways to improve in the drawing. But like, essentially it comes down to it, you're always redrawing. You don't want to ever be tracing. If you trace, you're going to get a stiff, slavish line. The way you get a spontaneous, dynamic line with lots of expression is by thinking and redrawing. As soon as you start tracing, you're not thinking anymore, you're trying to recreate and follow exactly. Even when you're doing studies of a master study and you're looking at another person's art and trying to recreate it, don't trace it. Think it out and redraw it. Same as you would do if you were revising and cleaning up your own drawing. That's how you get nice energy into things. So this is just like one drawing. If you're going to do a study of horses, what you want to do really is many of these, different angles, just different poses, running, standing, trotting, etc., with a rider, without a rider. Think about where the anatomy is and what you would see and how you would see it. Play with lighting, and always don't strive for perfect, but notice I didn't erase once. Like even here I'm changing the eye. I'm just drawing over. I've said this in other videos, but I'm going to say it again. I don't recommend erasing until you're really at the finish and you want to clean up something. And even then, sometimes I often leave the rough work in, because by erasing, you're often getting rid of the work that will tell you where the line should be. The line going down that feels wrong, it's speaking to you. It's telling you what needs to be done to be corrected. If you get rid of it, you often lose that reckoning point. Leave it in, use it to figure out where the line needs to be. So that's my 2 bits about drawing horses. I'm going to end the video there, try to keep these short, and have fun with your drawing, and keep it loose. Don't trace. Redraw. Take it easy. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/salgood, to help support making my art and my comics. And also, if you want to, you can pledge a higher tier to become a student patron and send me your homework, or just your artwork, or generally get feedback. And I will see you next time, Internet.